Hi there, welcome back for another episode of Dave's Desk looking at Bible basics. Today we're going to tackle the Book of Kings. As we said in the last video, Samuel, Kings, Chronicles, split in two by the first Greek translators, but originally one book, so we'll tackle them in one video. And the Book of Kings is a history book, but it's not a history book in the way we understand it. You see, mostly when we're looking at histories of kings, if you did like me, Year 7 history when I first was in secondary school was all about the kings and queens of England, and what we looked at was their political prowess or their military success or their economic development, but this isn't that kind of history. The Book of Kings just rates kings on one question, is how faithful are they to the covenant that God has made with his people. And David is seen as the archetype. So David is the king to which all other kings are judged against, and his name crops up time and again. And the story follows as David's descendants fail to live up to his standards. First of all, we have Solomon, who's wise, but towards the end of his life starts making some very bad choices. And so after he dies, the kingdom splits in half, with the northern country called Israel and the southern country called Judea. And throughout the body of kings, we see the nations move further and further away from God. The kings move further and further away from God. So many of the kings are described as they're described as doing evil in the eyes of the Lord, or leading the nation into doing evil in the eyes of the Lord. A couple of kings in Judea turn back the tide for a generation, but essentially it's even worse than the book of Judges in terms of systematically leaders walking away from God and failing to recognise God's hold over their life. The book emphasises the role of prophets and the role of prophecies, and in doing so the writer is helping us to see that although these guys are called kings, actually it's God who's in charge. And the more they ignore God's emissaries, the prophets, the more horrible the outcomes are. And eventually Israel and then later Judah are overwhelmed by foreign kingdoms, and the Judeans are sent into exile. And the writer of the Book of Kings is almost definitely writing from exile in Judea. And therefore we understand that what he's writing is not just a history of kings, it's an explanation of why we're in this mess. How did we get here? What were we doing wrong? And the answer is that we were ignoring God's promises to us. He reminds them that God had said, be faithful to me and you'll be okay in the land, oppose me and you'll lose the land. But he also reminds them that God made a promise to David. Every time he cites David, he's reminding them that David has been told, one of your descendants will sit on my throne forever. That no matter how bad it is right now in exile, there's still hope for something else in the future. That as they turn back to God, God will restore them because of this promise he made to David. He's saying that what we do, in discounting the political and economic and military achievements of the nations, what we do is less important than who we serve. So Solomon, who was great in wisdom, but his wisdom meant nothing when he stopped serving God. And Elijah, who's one of those prophets, he was absolutely, he was in the wilderness. He had nothing, but God met his need. His poverty wasn't a problem when he was serving God. And so it's not about what we do, but about who we serve. That's what God is longing for us to understand. I hope that's given you something to think about today. Hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.